North Point, so glad you are here with us today. As we wrap up The Lost Art of Following, I wanted to take a moment and just say how much of an influence Jeremy Johnson has had on my life. I know. And I'm just guessing I've got a little bit of influence on his. So what we're going to do today, I've got a painting in front of me. And through my influence, I'm going to tell him exactly what it looks like. And I'm going to see if he can draw what I've got right here in front of me. It's 4 men. Okay?
Yep, got it.
Same body style.
Okay.
Okay?
Okay.
And they are all standing in a line. Next guy, same game, blue. His right side, your left side. Oh.
Oh my.
Yeah, and honestly, we've only got probably about another hour left.
Okay, perfect.
Of doing this because boy, it's a situation here. Okay.
2 hours later.
Is it a standard issue turtleneck, or does it go below the waist?
It's very Preston Almerous. It's like
Below the waist, kind of a onesie.
It's tucked in.
Yeah. Then you have no clue.
We'll
like,
get
where
there.
does it end? I don't know actually,
but we'll get there.
That's so Preston. Okay, you got your picture ready?
Yeah. Spinning image. You went stick figure. Why did you go stick? Why did you go stick figure?
That's how I draw.
I recognize that face because I have a 5-year-old son who brings me art all the time. And I have to be like, it's so good, and then finds it in the trash an hour later. So my wife threw it away. I didn't. But hey, if we haven't met yet, my name is John. I help out as campus pastor here at the Springfield location. And I do want to take a moment and say happy Palm. It's not Sunday, but that's tomorrow. But weekend, I guess, where this is where we celebrate Jesus' triumphant entry into Jerusalem. And he had his followers who were praising him with palm branches. And we celebrate that this weekend. And then next weekend, of course, we've got Easter. And Easter, we got a couple service times on a Saturday night and a few on a Sunday. We'd love to have you, and excited to have Jeremy, our lead pastor, back live with us next weekend. But this week, like we've said, we're wrapping up a series called The Lost Art of Following, which I like the title. I didn't come up with it, full disclosure, but I like that it's not called The Art of Following. It is The Lost Art of Following, which I don't know. I don't know if you think about it this way, but I know I do. Now, when I think about following, I don't think that is like a really sexy word, okay, as a follower, all right? If I called you a follower, would you think that's more of a compliment or an insult? I'm just curious. Because when I think follower, I think not very special. I think kind of unskilled. You just you don't really think for yourself. You kind of just mindlessly go forward. In fact, I don't know. It feels like an insult a little bit. In fact, growing up, when I was younger, in the Martz household, my dad, and we're weird, so just go with it. My dad would always come up to me, and this is he'd say, okay, Jonathan, what are Martzes? And then I would have to say, Martzes are leaders. I don't know why. It's just something he came up with, and I had to say it. And so anytime I feel follower, I'm like, no. I'd be like, you're supposed to be a leader. You're not supposed to be a follower. You're supposed to be unique. You're supposed to be special. You're supposed to pave your own way. You're supposed to be the one trekking and leading the way. You are not supposed to follow. But the more I think about it, okay, I love that we're calling it the lost art of following, because I think following is this skill that honestly, not a lot of us do very well because we don't find it of great importance. But if we really think about it today, all of us are following something or someone. We are. All of us are following something or someone. We're following our morals or our values, or some of us were following our heart, okay? Some of us are following in the footsteps of our old man, or I've seen people follow a girl, right? I got a lot of buddies who were burping the ABCs yesterday, and today they're singing Ed Sheeran, because I'm like, they found the girl of their dreams. And I'm like, what a follower. Okay, some of us are following presidential candidates, or we're following accounts on social media. All of us in some way, shape, or form, we're all following. And here's the deal, it doesn't have to be bad. Some of us in this room, we'd say, I don't know, I'm a Christ follower, right? Like, no matter what, though, here's what we need to understand. All of us, we are following. And another way to say it is, all of us, we're under the influence of something or someone. And so today, that's what I want to talk about. I want to talk about this topic of influence and how we're constantly being influenced by something or someone. And here's the deal. Every day, we're influenced by something. Whether you're scrolling on social media and you get ads or you see billboards as you drive, maybe you turn on the TV and you're watching your favorite sitcom and there's laugh tracks in the background. They're influencing you to laugh. Right? You go to the store and you're walking and you're looking at all the brands and products. And what's interesting is obviously those brands, they pay to be in a certain spot where it just catches your eye at eye level. And they pay more for that spot than you would to like grab the chips down below. Okay? Because they're trying to influence you to buy their product. Anytime you go to a restaurant and the waitress or the waiter leaves you a mint, that's not because you were just a really good customer. Okay, they didn't just really think you were really funny. They do that because studies show if you give them something, when you give them the bill, they'll tip more. Okay, so they are influencing you to get more money from you. Okay, all the time we're being influenced. Our language can influence. Like any time that I want to go to Andy's, I don't just go to my wife, Mel, and be like, hey, you want to go get Andy's? Because she's healthy and she doesn't want it. She's like, no, we don't need it. We don't need to spend the money. I don't want to. So what I do is I use language like, would you be against going to Andy's? And she's like, well, I'm not against going to Andy's. Perfect, get in the car, let's go. We're influencing, right? You can use that later on tonight. You're welcome, all right? But even like our influences have influences. Like great artists are influenced by other great artists. Great authors are influenced by other great authors. Great musicians are influenced by other great musicians. Great business people are influenced by other great businesses or other great leaders. And so we are all under the influence of something or someone. We all are following something. And how we follow and who we follow and what we follow, it determines the direction of our life. And it's actually a pretty big deal. And so today, here's what I want us to do. I want us to take a moment, and I want us to think about what we think about. In fact, I have it written down this way, is that whatever gets your attention will influence your direction. Whatever gets your attention, it'll influence your direction. Another way to say it is kind of like whatever catches your eye will steal your focus, and you'll start to move in that direction. It's kind of like going to Target, okay? Which this is what my wife tells me: you don't go to Target because you need something. Apparently, you go to Target to let Target tell you what you need. That's how that works, okay? And you just go, and whatever catches your eye, that's what you throw in the cart. And I gotta be honest, you end up with a lot of things you don't need, and it costs you more than you thought it was gonna cost, okay? And some of us, though, we live our life that way. Whatever catches our attention, that ends up determining our direction. Or a lot of times, we don't know what we want. So we just go with what catches our eye. We don't know what we want, so then what we end up doing is we follow what everybody else wants. Maybe you feel like you've been doing that. Maybe that's relationally, right? Like somebody shows up and they're like, no, you shouldn't be single in your 20s. You should be having fun. You should meet somebody. And so, somebody sets you up with a guy and he's charming and funny, but he's kind of a jerk and he's mean to his mom and it's a red flag. And you spend a year of your life investing in a relationship that you're like, I didn't even want this in the first place. But like all of a sudden you're like, oh, I followed what other people told me I should follow. Maybe that's money. Maybe you got in a career because it had a really good paycheck and everybody told you need a better title, you need a better position, you need a bigger platform, and that's going to give you a lot of purpose. And through this time, you've sacrificed a lot of time, you've sacrificed family, you've sacrificed health, all for the almighty dollar, and all of a sudden you're like, man, I don't even know how I chose this. You end up following what everybody else told you should follow. Maybe that's happiness. and you buy a lot of things you don't need, and you go in debt for things that people tell you should have, and all of a sudden you're like, well, I don't know, I was happy for a second. Now I'm more stressed than ever about what I've gotten myself into, and all of a sudden you're like, well, I didn't know what I wanted, so I just ended up trying what everybody else wanted, and I followed them, and it led me to a place in my life I don't like. Maybe you feel that way spiritually. Maybe you showed up today and you're waiting for a pastor to tell you what you should be doing, and you're confused, you don't know, but you just feel like there should be more. And I want to let you know, you're in a great spot. Like, we truly are striving to just be a safe place to explore these bold claims of Scripture. And I got to be honest, my goal today is not to talk you into something, because I truly believe somebody a lot smarter will talk you out of it. But I do think today I just want to lay out what it might look like to have God at the center of your life and how that can impact you, and let you make that decision, okay? And my goal is not to necessarily influence you one way or the other. It's to lay out the information for you to make that decision, not necessarily me, okay? Because constantly, here's what we gotta know. We're all being influenced by something or someone. And if we end up following what everybody else wants, well, it puts the wrong person in control of your life, and you end up staying busy doing all the wrong things, because whatever grabbed your attention, it just ended up influencing your direction. And here's the deal, that could be a negative thing, but I also think that could be a positive thing. Like, sometimes the same thing can catch our eye and lead us in two different directions based on who we are and our experiences. In fact, there's a famous story of a alcoholic father and his two sons. And one day, one of the sons grew up to become an alcoholic, just like his dad. And when people asked, they said, what happened? He said, well, I watched my dad. And then the second brother, he grew up to never touch alcohol a day in his life. And when people asked, they're like, what happened? He said, well, I watched my dad. Here's what I know. Two people who grew up the exact same way, who had the exact same influence, and it caught their attention, but it led them in different directions. It's not always negative. Sometimes it can be positive. But here's what I know. We are constantly being influenced by something all the time. Here's what I also want you to understand. We are constantly influencing something or someone all the time as well. In fact, I have it written down this way, is don't get so caught up in becoming someone that you forget you already are someone. Don't get so caught up, and I'm a big fan of planning for the future, but don't get so caught up in becoming someone that you forget that right here, right now, you already are someone. And a lot of times what we can get caught in is we can see the CEO with all the success, and we're like, once I get there, then I'll have influence, right? Once you see the lights and the stage and the camera, and it's like, once I get there, then I'll have influence. That'll be it. Or you see the social media star with tons of followers, and you're like, if I could get there, or at least the next level, then I will have influence. But a lot of times what we forget, we got to influence right here, right now. And the things that you do right now matter. And the way that you treat people right now matters. And the things that you say right now, they matter. Maybe some of you, you're a stay-at-home mom. And I want to let you know, you are influencing little lives all day long. The things you do shapes them. It influences them. And I know sometimes those little lives make you want to be under the influence. Okay, I get it. Like during COVID, But what I'm saying is the things you do matter. You're shaping these little lives. It's a big deal. It's a big deal. Maybe some of you, your kids are grown up and you got teens, and maybe they're around a lot of bad influences, and you are the one good influence that they have. Keep loving them, keep caring about them, keep encouraging them, right? Keep being a part of their life and speaking life into them. What you are doing matters. You have more influence than you think. Maybe some of you, maybe you are a boss and you got some other people that are in your care, right? The things that you say, the way that you treat people, it impacts their dinner table. So it matters, right? Here's what I know. All of us have more influence than we think. And you may be sitting out here and you're like, no, all I do is I just take calls at a support center. I don't really do anything. I gotta be honest, have you ever called customer support? The way they answer the phone can make you or break you real quick, all right? Maybe some of you are like, no, seriously, I really don't have any influence. I just, I sit in my parents' basement. I just play video games. Which one? Knock it off and remember that you are somebody, okay? But two, I bet you come in contact with so many people online, so many more than we'd even come in contact with in person. I'm like, what are you doing? How are you using that influence? Maybe you just got an Instagram and you got 20 followers. That's more followers than Jesus started with. That's a big deal. We all have influence, and with great power comes great responsibility. My question today that I want to walk through is, how are we leveraging the influence that we have right here, right now? And it's important to look to the future. I love having goals. I love having dreams. But so many times we eliminate the now, and we just think, okay, when I get to here, then I will be able to have it. But right now, we've all got influence. My question today is, how are you using it? And so what I want to do is I want to look at a guy in Scripture that has a ton of influence. He had a ton of authority. He had a kingdom's worth of followers. He's a big deal. But he started as a nobody. And some of you may recognize his name. His name is David, King David. And you don't even really have to know Scripture to know some stories of King David. If you've watched any March Madness, then you've heard of David versus Goliath, right? You got these nobody teams who are knocking off these big names. And that's it. Hey, that's where it started. This is the same David, all right, who slayed a giant. This is the David who he was a warrior, where there were chants where the current king, King Saul, he's killed thousands, but David's killed tens of thousands. David, he wrote the book of Psalms. So he was an artist, he's a musician, he was a poet. He's like Brad Bradshaw, doctor, physician, lawyer. Like, he does it all. He's a big deal, all right? Here's what David was. David was an influencer. David was an influencer, but he was also very influenced. We find stories of King David who ended up stealing another man's wife, who had his kids fighting over his empire, who one time acted insane because he was so influenced by fear of another empire that was going to try to come and kill him that he had to fake his own insanity. Like, this was a guy who was an influencer, and he's also so influenced, but at the end of his days, here's what was known about him, that he was a man after God's own heart. So today, when we talk about influence, what we're going to do is we're going to go all the way back to the beginning of David's life, well before he had all of the titles and well before he had all the authority, and walk through what did he do with his initial life to be able to build up to have this trajectory of being a man after God's own heart. I think it'd be pretty cool at the end of our days if we were known as a man or a woman after God's own heart. Wouldn't that be pretty cool? And so when we pick up in this story, and we look at the beginning of David's life, what we're going to take up, we're going to look at this book of 1 Samuel, where there's this prophet who's named Samuel who is looking to appoint the next king. Because the current king, King Saul, who was disobedient to God, and so the kingdom is not going to stay in his bloodline. And so this prophet Samuel is going from town to town, and he ends up landing in the town of Bethlehem, which maybe that sounds familiar. There's another king that was born there years and years later. But we'll talk about that during Christmas, okay? But when he lands in Bethlehem, and he finds this family where the dad's name is Jesse, and that's where God says, you're going to find your next king. And so when we read it, it says this. It says, when they arrived, Samuel took one look at Eliab and thought, here he is, God's anointed. But God told Samuel, looks ain't everything. Oof, thankful my wife feels the same way. I say, don't be impressed by his looks and stature. I've already eliminated him. God judges persons differently than humans do. Men and women look at the face, but God looks at the heart. Jesse then called up Abinadab and presented him to Samuel. And Samuel said, this man isn't God's choice either. Next, Jesse presented Shammah. And Samuel said, no, this man isn't it either. Jesse presented his 7 sons to Samuel, and Samuel was blunt with Jesse. God hasn't chosen none of these. Then he asked Jesse, is this it? Are there no more sons? Well, yeah, this is what they say. There's the runt, and he's out tending sheep. You're like, oh my word, unbelievable. They didn't even put it. He had 8 sons and only showed up 7 of them. And here's David, voted most likely to follow. All right, so he's not even in the list. Samuel ordered Jesse, go get him. We're not moving from this spot until he's here. Jesse sent for him. He was brought in, the very picture of health, bright-eyed and good-looking. And God said, up to your feet, anoint him. This is the one. Samuel took his flask of oil, anointed him with his brothers standing around watching. Awkward. For the Spirit of God entered David like a rush of wind, and God vitally empowered him for the rest of his life. And so here's what we got. We got this nobody. We got this runt. We got this guy that not even his brothers or his dad was like, you're going to be somebody one day. But he was chosen by God to carry out his plans. And so one of the things when it comes to influence that I wrote down that I think is helpful is that influence is rarely instant and it's rarely obvious. Think about it. Influence is rarely instant and it's rarely obvious. When I think of influencers, you know what I naturally think of? I think of like YouTube stars, or I think of like Patrick Mahomes and Taylor Swift, and I'm like, that's influence. But if I'm honest, I feel like they have very little influence on my day-to-day life. In fact, the people that have the most influence on me were normal people who were not very obvious. I think about somebody who is so influential for me was my second grade teacher, Miss Harris, who I would go in early to school because I couldn't pronounce certain words, and she would work with me, and we'd walk through like vowels and consonants, and I would say it like this. So if you've heard anything weird, she didn't do that good of a job, but we would walk through this so I could become like a better speaker so that kids wouldn't make fun of me. And we worked together for an entire year, all of second grade. And even after that, she'd write me letters just checking in to see how I'm doing. And I'm like, she made such an influence on me. When I think about somebody who made an influence, I think about my fourth grade Sunday school teacher, Donna Phillips, who would give me a quarter for every memory verse I memorized. I robbed that old lady blind. I mean, I tell you, I'd come in every single week with like 10 to 12 verses. I'm like, Jesus wept. Okay, give me my quarter. But I think about it even today. I'm like, I've got certain verses stuck in my head. For the word of God is living and active, sharper than any double-edged sword. It penetrates to dividing soul and spirit, joints and marrow, judges the thoughts and attitudes of your hearts. Hebrews 4:12. I'm like, I have that memorized today. Why? Donna Phillips. All for that quarter, okay? But I'm like, huge influence on my life. When I think about who made an influence on my life, I think about one of my college roommates, Scotty, who found out that my car broke down. It was going to be $300 to fix. I'm like, that's my whole money for the entire semester. All right, I'm like, there's no way I can fix this. And I remember him. I showed up one day, and there was an envelope, and I opened it. There was $300 in it. And he said, no need to pay me back, but when you get the money, pay it forward. And I'm like, if he called today, I would do anything for that guy. I'm like, that's influence. And some of you are like, yeah, whatever, I don't even know who they are. That's the point. You don't know who they are, but I will never forget them. That's influence. And for some of you, I don't know who it is. If it's a parent that shaped you, I don't know if it's a coach that didn't give up on you, if it's a teacher that worked with you, a coworker that just took time to sit with you. That is influence. It's not these influencers that we see that we think are larger than life. It's these normal, consistent people that worked with us that made the impact. In fact, one of the other things I wrote down when it comes to influence is this, that influence isn't about the information you learn. It's more about the calories you burn. Influence is less about the information you learn, okay? It's less about what you know, and it's more about what you do with what you know. It's more about application. It's less about just getting the information, all right? To have influence, you don't need to just be the loudest voice on what you believe. You got to do something with what you got. And when I think about David, I'm like, what did David do? David was working. He tended his sheep. When all of his brothers were getting in line to potentially be named king, what was David doing? He was doing something. He was working. He wasn't showing off how much he knows and who he is. He was consistently working. And for some of us, maybe that's where we're at. We're like, I just want to get in line for the next promotion. I want to get in line for the next title. I want to get in line for the next platform, and then I'll have influence. But what you got to remember, it's more about the calories you burn. It's more about the things that you're doing that make the impact. You know, it reminds me of the story of Ferrari. You got any car guys in here? You Ferrari? All right, no, there's a few of you. Okay. I don't own one, so I don't know. But Ferrari, all right, this big car company, and it was interesting. So what happened is there was this part in a Ferrari cars that kept kind of breaking down and corroding. So they kept having to recall this part when Ferrari's kind of early on. And there was this guy who was a little bit older, but he had a successful tractor business, but he loved driving Ferraris. And so what he would do is he noticed one day his Ferrari kind of broke down. He ended up getting the part, and he ended up just taking apart the entire Ferrari. And he's like, I know tractors, I could do this. And so he finds the part, he fixes the part, he finds this is how I would fix it. Okay, and what he does is he goes to Ferrari, writes some letters. He's around the same area as like the plant, so he goes to them. He's like, hey, I've got the fix for the part that keeps on breaking down on Ferraris. And they're like, who cares? We don't care what you know, we'll fix it. Like, we don't need your help. And so, you know what he does? He just pouted and complained for the rest of his life. No, you know what he did? He took that part and he said, you know what, I think I can do it better. And he ended up building a car company. Anybody know what it's called? Lamborghini. Some of you right now, you have a Lamborghini influence. And what you've been doing is you're just complaining because it's not Ferrari. Like, some of you just need to do something with what you got. Some of you, you're so good with kids, but you're just like, yeah, but I don't know. I'm like, just go serve somewhere. Serve in Kid Point. Go start coach a T-ball team. Go serve at wherever. Right? Get on a PTA board. I don't know. Do something with what you've got. Some of you just got a heart of gold. And you're like, I'm like, go serve at the Dream Center, okay? Go help out Convoy. Go build a house with Habitat, right? Like, go do something with the compassion and the love that you have. Some of you just got to do something with what you got, because it's less about the information you know, and it's way more about the calories you burn when you do it, right? It's the application that is the helpful part. And so David, here's what we got. A guy who is so focused on doing things, tending his sheep, he's not getting in line, where he was almost forgotten. But he wasn't. And so what do you think? When David got named king, like, what do you think he did? Like, do you think he was like, went on tour? He's like, okay, just everybody probably wants to know me, and he's just like kissing hands and shaking babies and going around, and I think I got those mixed up. Shaking hands, kissing baby. I don't want him serving in Kid Point. Okay, shaking hands, kissing babies. That's what we want to do. You think that's what he was doing? You think he was doing that? Or you think he was like, he was just being served by his brothers. His brothers all bowed down to him. They're like, whoa, that's awesome. No, like, you know what he's doing? He didn't do any of that. In fact, he actually, he went back and he burned more calories. He just kept doing what he was already assigned. He kept looking after his sheep. And while he was there, he honed some skills. In fact, in the next passage, what it talks through is he's got this skill as a musician. And King Saul at the time was looking for a musician. And so, in fact, it says this. It says, let our Lord command his servants here to search for someone who can play the lyre. King Saul's kind of saying this. And so Saul said to his attendants, yeah, find someone who plays. We'll bring him back to me. One of the servants answered, I've seen the son of Jesse of Bethlehem who knows how to play the lyre. Then Saul sent messengers to Jesse and said, send me your son David, where was he at? With the sheep. With the sheep. So you got this guy, King David, who's appointed king. And what is he doing? He just goes back to tending sheep. David loved sheep more than he loved being king. He loved the job he had more than the platform or the position or the authority that came with being king. In fact, one of the things I wrote down that I think is helpful for us when it comes to influence is this, that influence doesn't require you to go to the next level. Oftentimes what it requires is for you to grow to the next level. There is no position or title or platform that you can get that will ever fill that desire for more. David understood that. And what he got was, it's the small things that you do that leave the big impact that everybody wants. It's the things that you do in your downtime that make you or break you. And even what David was doing is the entire time that he had this insight of knowing that he's king, but he doesn't really have the influence of it yet. What he did was he just got to work with the things that he knew how to do. He kept tending his sheep. He kept working on his craft as a musician. And what happened is there was an opportunity that popped up where the king's looking for somebody. You know what it reminds me of? It reminds me of, I got actually a quick picture of, this is going to be a picture of Chinese bamboo. Isn't that cool? Yeah, okay, no. All right, it reminds me of the Chinese bamboo. Okay, for the Chinese bamboo, for the first year of the Chinese bamboo's life, what you have to do every single day, you have to water it, you have to care for it, you have to nurture it for an entire year, all right? And then at the second year, okay, show me. Second year, now I'm just playing. For 2 years, what you have to do, you have to water it, you have to care for it, you have to make sure it gets sunlight, like you gotta nurture it. So then, but by the third year, you guys get the bit now? By the fifth year, okay, what happens? For 5 years, what you have to do, for 5 years, it looks like this. That's a houseplant I don't want. All right, for 5 years, you water it, you nurture it, you care for it, and this is what you get. Isn't that lame? Like some of you right now, like you feel that way. You're like, I've given my singleness to God, okay? And I'm just like living this, and like no opportunity has come up, but I remain faithful and I'm steady. Keep going. Keep doing the right thing. Keep on doing it, right? For some of you, you're like, I've been loving my kids who are older and they don't love me. They don't want to be a part of my life, but I've been trying to be a part of. Keep doing it. Keep loving them. Keep accepting them. Keep encouraging them. Some of you, maybe you're serving your city and serving your community and you're like, I don't know, but I'm not getting a lot of, like, no one's really noticing me. And I'm like, keep doing it. Yes, it matters. Yes, it's making a difference. Yes, it's making an impact. And for 5 years, Chinese bamboo, that's what it looks like. But within 5 weeks after that 5-year mark, we got another picture. It shoots up to 80 feet tall. What you don't understand is for the 5 years that you were watering it and you were nurturing it, it was growing. You just didn't notice it because it was growing down before it grew up. And for some of you, I feel like that's where we're at. What we need to do is stop asking for more stuff and ask God for us to, how can we be a better steward of the things we already have? Let's not ask for how can we be seen. Let's ask God, how can you help me see those around me? We don't have to ask like, God, can you like give me more influence? What are you doing with the influence you got right now? In fact, the last thing I wrote down is when it comes to influence, stop asking God to grow your followers and just ask God to grow you. And what I think about is well before David was King David, before he slayed a giant, before he became this famous warrior, before he wrote the book of Psalms, which shaped a lot of us, before he was known as a man after God's own heart, before he had a kingdom's worth of followers, he was shepherd boy David, who was shoveling sheep dung, all right? And just over and over, and he was faithful, and he was faithful. And for some of us, you don't need a bigger position. You don't need a better title. You don't need a bigger platform for God to use you right now. And if you're not worried about getting the credit and God gets the glory, you're going to do something monumental in your community. And those around you are going to notice. In fact, one of the things I want you to do is on each one of your seats, you've got a connection card. And what I want you to do is just take a moment, okay? I want you to take a moment and I want you to write down one way you're going to use your influence this week. Because remember, we all got it. And I know you're like, this is silly. Like, do I really need to do it? I challenge you, do it. Think through what's one way that you can use your influence this week. In a moment, what we're going to do is we're going to like pass the buckets and we're going to collect this. But what I want you to do, one way, whether it's just sharing a meal with somebody who you think needs it, whether it's spending some extra time with a coworker that you know a lot of people haven't invested in, whether it's one act of kindness, maybe it's serving those around you, whatever it is, right? I challenge you, write this down. Maybe for some of you on this connection card, when it comes to that, you're like, I don't know what I'm going to do this week, but I'm going to start something. Awesome. Mark that on the card. What we want to do is we want to partner with you on that. Like, what are you going to start this week to start using your influence? If you've like, I've been a bad steward of it. Great, let's change it. We could change that this week. Maybe for others of you, you feel like the bamboo. You're like, okay, I'm just gonna, like what I actually need to write down is that I need to keep going. I need to keep doing what I'm doing because I know that if I keep doing it, it'll make an impact. Right now, I don't see it. Right now, I feel like I'm just growing under the surface and not a lot is shooting up, not a lot is sprouting up. I don't have a lot to show for it, but one day I will. Because when I put it in God's hands, it's gonna grow. I challenge you, write that down on the connection card, all right? And what I want to do is I also want to invite our ushers forward. What this is also our opportunity to give. And I know one thing on this connection card that I want to talk about is if this is your first time here, what I want you to do is I want you to mark that first time guest box. And what we want to do is make a donation in your honor to a local nonprofit. So just by showing up today, you know you can influence the community in a positive way, which I think is pretty cool. All right? And so what I want to do is I want to take a moment and I want to pray. I want to pray that today we're able to use that influence that God's given us, and it's probably not going to be instant, and it's probably not going to be obvious. It's going to look normal and mundane, but I pray that we'd really lean in on the opportunities God's given us to leverage that influence we have, to remind ourselves that we are a somebody, and that what we're doing is important, and it matters, and to keep going. So let me pray. Lord, I'm thankful. I'm thankful for this opportunity to get to remind ourselves that you got a plan for us, that you've given us and gifted us with influence. Not one day, but right here, right now. We've got opportunities to love. We've got opportunities to serve. We've got opportunities to share. We've got opportunities to grow those around us. I just believe as we lean into these opportunities to use our influence, that God, it's going to grow those around us. And more importantly as well, it's going to grow us in the process. And so God, I pray you'd use us this week in a powerful way. In your name, amen.